Sarah Morgan had perfected the art of ordinary. At 42, her honey blonde hair stayed in the same practical ponytail she'd worn for 15 years. Her weathered hands moved with precise efficiency behind the counter of Lighthouse Coffee, and her quiet smile revealed nothing of the woman who once conducted covert operations in places that didn't exist on public maps. What her customers didn't know, what no one in the sleepy coastal town of Newport Harbor knew, was that the woman who crafted their perfect lattes had once been Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood, one of the first women to complete Navy SEAL training through a classified experimental program that the government still officially denied existed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The peaceful rhythms of Lighthouse Coffee on Main Street had become Sarah's sanctuary, a world away from the chaos and danger of her former life. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., she unlocked the weathered blue door of the converted Victorian house that housed her café, her footsteps echoing through rooms that smelled of fresh ground beans and sea salt from the harbor just 2 blocks away. The routine was both torture and salvation, so different from the unpredictability of operations that once defined her existence, yet providing the structure her military-trained mind still craved. Her café had become something of a local institution. Over the past decade, fishermen stopped in before dawn for coffee strong enough to put hair on your chest, as old Pete liked to say. Tourists wandered in during summer months, drawn by the 5-star online reviews and charming ocean-themed decor. Regular customers knew Sarah made the best coffee in 3 counties, but they knew surprisingly little about the woman herself. She preferred it that way. What they saw was a hard-working small business owner who sponsored the local Little League team, donated coffee for town functions, and kept to herself. They didn't see the scars hidden beneath her long-sleeved shirts, evidence of shrapnel from an IED in Kandahar. They never noticed how she always positioned herself facing doorways, her eyes automatically scanning each person who entered. They certainly didn't know about the modified Sig Sauer P226 secured in a hidden compartment beneath the counter, identical to the one she'd carried during 15 high-risk extractions of intelligence assets. The nightmare that ended her career began during a classified operation codenamed Silver Crescent. Intelligence reports indicated a high-value target had established a training facility in a remote compound near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Sarah's team was tasked with confirmation and, if possible, capture. The mission had been compromised before they even reached the insertion point. Commander James Westfield, her superior officer, and the man who had championed her inclusion in the program, had unknowingly trusted intelligence from a double agent. The team walked into a carefully orchestrated ambush that left 3 operators dead and Sarah critically wounded. When the investigation began, falsified evidence suggested Sarah had disobeyed direct orders, leading her team into an obvious trap. Her security clearance was revoked pending investigation, and Commander Westfield was suddenly transferred to Pentagon duties before he could intervene. A network of corrupt intelligence officials buried the truth under mountains of classified documents and manufactured evidence. Now, 15 years later, Sarah lived in the shadows of her former self. Every cup of coffee she brewed, every pastry she arranged in the display case was both penance and purpose, a life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. She'd legally changed her name, moved to a town where no one asked too many questions, and created a new identity far removed from the world of special operations. The shipping container that functioned as her storage room behind the cafe held a hidden compartment containing 3 items: her Navy Cross medal in a simple wooden box, awarded in a private ceremony before her fall from grace, a laminated photo of her SEAL team standing beside a helicopter, faces blurred for security, and a worn letter from Petty Officer Michael Chun, one of the men who died during Silver Crescent, written to his family but never sent. If anything happens to me, Chun had written, know that I served with the best. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood sees things others miss. She's kept us alive through situations I can't describe. Whatever the official report might say, trust that she made the right calls. We all would follow her anywhere. Every morning at 4:45 a.m., Sarah ran 3 miles along the harbor breakwater, rain or shine. The physical exertion helped quiet the memories, the constant sense that she had failed her team. Her feet found the same path they'd traced for 15 years, each step a reminder of lives lost and truths buried beneath layers of classification and lies. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Sarah prepared for the morning rush, arranging freshly baked cinnamon rolls in the display case, her assistant manager Mia Chun arrived with her usual cheerful energy. At 24, Mia was everything Sarah wasn't: openly emotional, prone to sharing personal stories with customers, and blissfully unaware of how dangerous the world could be. She wore her heart on her sleeve and dyed her hair a different color every month. Today, it was a vibrant purple. "Morning, boss," Mia called out, tying her apron around her waist. "You would not believe the date I had last night. This guy from the marina, Jake, total disaster. Spent the whole night talking about his boat. I mean, who names their boat Wet Dream and thinks that's charming?" Sarah smiled despite herself. Mia's dating disasters were a regular source of entertainment in the quiet café. "Maybe he's compensating for something," she replied, sliding a fresh cup of coffee across the counter. 2 sugars, splash of almond milk, exactly how Mia liked it. What Sarah never mentioned was that Mia had been hired for reasons beyond her barista skills. Michael Chun's personnel file had listed a niece born 3 years before Silver Crescent. Sarah had tracked down the family, watched from a distance as Mia grew up without an uncle she barely remembered. When Mia moved to Newport Harbor for college and applied for a job at Lighthouse Coffee, Sarah recognized the name immediately. Hiring her had been both impulsive and calculated, a way to honor Michael's memory while keeping a promise she'd made to herself to look after the families left behind. Mia had no idea, of course. No idea that Sarah sometimes studied her profile, looking for traces of Michael in her smile or the determined set of her jaw when she concentrated. No idea that her boss had once carried her uncle's body through hostile territory for 18 miles to ensure he came home. "Earth to Sarah," Mia waved her hand in front of Sarah's face. "You went somewhere else again. You know, for someone who makes conversation with customers all day, you're the most mysterious person I know." Sarah refocused, muscle memory taking over as she prepared the espresso machine for opening. "Just thinking about inventory. Coffee shipment is late this week." It was a lie, but a harmless one. Better than explaining she'd been remembering the weight of Michael Chun's body across her shoulders, the copper smell of blood mixing with dust, the sound of gunfire in the distance as she pushed forward 1 step at a time. "You work too hard," Mia declared, flipping the sign on the door to open. "You should come out with me and the girls sometime, live a little." Sarah's polite decline was interrupted by the arrival of their first customers, the morning regulars who formed the backbone of her business. Jim Peterson from the hardware store, Martha Winters, who taught 2nd grade at the elementary school, Chief Mark Sullivan from the local police department. They formed a comforting parade of predictability, ordering the same drinks, making the same small talk about weather and local events. Chief Sullivan lingered at the counter longer than usual, his expression somber beneath his salt and pepper mustache. "Hey, Sarah, wanted to give you a heads up. We've had reports of a group hitting small businesses along the coast. 3 coffee shops in Portsmouth last week. They come in right before closing, armed, usually 3 men. In and out in under 2 minutes with the day's cash." Sarah nodded, her expression neutral while her mind immediately began calculating. Angles, escape routes, defensive positions. Thanks for the warning, Chief. We'll be careful. Maybe get yourself one of those doorbell camera things, Sullivan suggested. And don't hesitate to call if anything seems off. Response time from the station to here is about 4 minutes. 4 minutes was an eternity in a crisis situation. Sarah knew this better than most, but she smiled and thanked him for the advice. After Sullivan left, Mia looked worried. Should we be concerned? Maybe we should close early this week? We'll be fine, Sarah reassured her, though her mind was already plotting security adjustments. Just be a little more aware of who comes in around closing time. And we'll start making bank drops after the lunch rush instead of at the end of the day. What she didn't say was that she would be bringing a second weapon to work, the compact Glock she kept in her bedside table, or that she would start parking her car behind the building rather than walking home as usual. Some habits never died, and threat assessment was engraved in her DNA. The day proceeded normally, a steady stream of customers keeping both women busy. Sarah moved through the familiar rhythm of grinding beans, pulling shots, steaming milk tasks that required just enough concentration to quiet the hypervigilance that still occasionally gripped her. This ordinary life she'd built was her fortress against the past. Each mundane interaction another brick in the wall between Lieutenant Commander Blackwood and Sarah Morgan. At 3 o'clock, a stranger entered the café. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the unmistakable bearing of military. Sarah spotted it immediately, the way he scanned the room upon entering, his positioning with clear sightlines to both the front door and the hallway leading to the back exit. He moved with the controlled economy of someone trained to be aware of his surroundings at all times. When he reached the counter, his eyes met hers with a flash of recognition that sent ice through her veins. "Medium Americano, please," he said, his voice deliberately casual. "It's been a while since I've had decent coffee. I just moved to town." Sarah maintained her customer service smile while her mind raced. Did she know him? Had their paths crossed during her service? Or was he one of the many intelligence operatives who had combed through her life during the investigation, looking for evidence to support the narrative of her failure? New in town? She asked, turning to prepare his drink. The motion allowed her to check the mirror position behind the espresso machine, a design choice that had less to do with aesthetics than maintaining situational awareness. "What brings you to Newport Harbor?" "Retirement, I guess you could say. After 20 years in the Navy, I wanted somewhere quiet." He placed exact change on the counter. "Commander Jackson Pierce. Most people call me Jack." The name meant nothing to her, but that didn't rule out danger. Names changed in their line of work as easily as civilian clothes replaced uniforms. "Well, Jack, welcome to Lighthouse Coffee. I'm Sarah. First drinks on the house for new neighbors." He accepted the cup with a nod. "Appreciate that. Nice place you've got here. Feels secure." The word choice wasn't accidental. Sarah felt certain of it. As Pierce moved to a table near the window, she noticed the slight adjustment of his jacket covering what was almost certainly a shoulder holster. Not unusual for former military to carry concealed, but combined with the timing of his arrival. After Sullivan's warning, it elevated her concern. "He's cute," Mia whispered, nudging Sarah with her elbow. "A little old for me, but definitely your type. And he couldn't stop looking at you." "Focus on the customers, Mia," Sarah replied, forcing lightness into her tone. "Romance isn't on today's menu." Pierce stayed for 47 minutes, nursing his coffee while appearing to read something on his phone. He left with another nod in Sarah's direction, but no further conversation. The moment the door closed behind him, she sent Mia to restock the napkin dispensers and slipped into the back office. A quick search on her phone yielded nothing for Commander Jackson Pierce in the Navy's public records. Either he was lying about his identity, or his service record was classified enough to be scrubbed from accessible databases. Neither option was reassuring. Sarah's instincts, honed through years of operations in hostile territory, hummed with warning. Pierce's appearance, coupled with Sullivan's heads-up about the robberies, created a pattern that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. For the first time in 15 years, she felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, her body preparing for combat before her conscious mind had fully processed the threat. She unlocked the bottom drawer of her desk and removed the burner phone she'd kept charged but unused for over a decade. The number she dialed was one she'd memorized but never expected to use again. A secure line to the only person from her past she still marginally trusted. After 4 rings, a gruff voice answered. Analytics. Verification code Sierra Tango 947, Sarah said, the words feeling foreign on her tongue after so many years. I need information on Commander Jackson Pierce, Navy, possibly. Special Operations. A long pause followed. This line hasn't been active in 15 years. Who am I speaking with? The ghost of Silver Crescent. Another pause, longer this time. Jesus Christ, Blackwood? They told us you were dead. They told you a lot of things, Sarah replied evenly. I need this information, Marcus. No official channels, no records, just between us. Marcus Reynolds had been a junior analyst when she was active, one of the few people who had questioned the official narrative about Silver Crescent. His skepticism had nearly cost him his career, but he'd survived by keeping his head down and his doubts private. Give me 24 hours, he finally said. And Blackwood? Whatever hole you're hiding in, make it deeper. There's been movement in old files. People asking questions that haven't been asked in years. The line went dead, leaving Sarah with the distinct feeling that her carefully constructed civilian life was beginning to crumble around her. Someone had found her, whether Pierce or whoever had sent him, and 15 years of anonymity wouldn't provide protection once her real identity surfaced. As she returned to the front of the café, she caught sight of a familiar vehicle parked across the street. Chief Sullivan's police cruiser sat empty, but positioned with a clear view of Lighthouse Coffee's entrance. Coincidence? Or had her call on the burner phone triggered some kind of alert? The café closed at 7, and Sarah insisted Mia leave with the last customers. I'll finish the cleanup myself tonight. Your friend's art show starts at 7:30, right? You don't want to be late. Are you sure? Mia asked, already untying her apron. I can stay if you want company. Especially with those robbery warnings. I'm fine, Sarah assured her. Go enjoy your evening. I've got my car today, and I'll lock up as soon as I'm done. What she didn't mention was that she wanted Mia safely away from whatever might be developing. If Pierce's appearance was connected to Sarah's past rather than the reported robberies, collateral damage was a genuine concern. She'd lost enough people under her command. She wouldn't risk Mia becoming another casualty. As darkness fell outside, the large front windows, Sarah moved through closing procedures with heightened awareness. She wiped down tables positioned closer to potential cover, rearranged chairs to create obstacles in what would be a likely entry path, and mentally calculated angles of fire from various positions in the café. When the knock came at the locked front door at 7:32 p.m., she was ready. Through the glass, she could see Pierce standing alone, hands visible, expression serious. Behind him, the street appeared empty except for a sedan parked at the far end of the block, a vehicle she hadn't noticed earlier. Sarah moved to the door, but didn't unlock it. We're closed, she called through the glass. I need to speak with you, Pierce replied, his voice carrying clearly. It's about Silver Crescent. The name of the operation, one that had been buried under layers of classification, confirmed her worst fears. Pierce hadn't found her by accident. This was about her past, about the buried truth of what had happened 15 years ago. Against every survival instinct, Sarah unlocked the door. If they had found her once, they would find her again. Better to face the threat directly than spend another 15 years looking over her shoulder. Pierce stepped inside, and she immediately relocked the door behind him. "You have 2 minutes to explain who you are and what you want before I call the police." "The police can't help you with this, Commander Blackwood." Pierce maintained a respectful distance, hands still visible. "And I'm exactly who I said I am. I was with Devigru Team 3 until 8 months ago. I've spent the last 5 years investigating what really happened during Silver Crescent." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but her hand moved slightly, closer to the counter where her weapon was concealed. "Why?" "That operation is ancient history. Because 3 good men died for nothing, and the person responsible was never held accountable." Pierce's eyes hardened. "And because Commander Westfield was my mentor too. Before he died last month, he made me promise to find you." The news hit Sarah like a physical blow. James Westfield dead. The man who had believed in her when no one else did, who had fought for her inclusion in the program and defended her abilities against skeptics. The last person who knew the full truth of what happened that night. "Prove it," she said, voice steady despite the emotion threatening to surface. "Prove you knew Westfield." Pierce reached slowly into his jacket, telegraphing his movements. He withdrew not a weapon, but a worn challenge coin distinctive with its eagle and trident design. "He gave this to me when I completed training. And before he died, he told me to tell you that the tide is turning. He said you'd understand." The phrase was unmistakable, a coded message she and Westfield had established years ago to be used only if one of them discovered evidence that could clear her name. Sarah felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "Why now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been 15 years. Because the man who set you up is about to become the next director of Special Operations Command." Pierce's expression was grim. "And because 3 days ago, someone tried to access the sealed files of Silver Crescent. When they couldn't, they started eliminating everyone connected to the operation. 2 former analysts are dead, made to look like accidents. Westfield's heart attack wasn't natural. And you're next on their list." As if to punctuate his warning, the sound of tires screeching outside cut through the quiet café. Through the front windows, Sarah saw 3 men emerging from the sedan she'd noticed earlier, moving with tactical precision toward the entrance of Lighthouse Coffee. Pierce turned at the sound, his hand moving to his concealed weapon. "You've gotta back way out of here." Sarah was already moving. "Follow me, and stay low." 15 years of hiding her identity were about to end. The woman who had built a quiet life serving coffee was disappearing with each step toward the storage room, replaced by the Navy SEAL commander who had once led elite operators through situations most people couldn't imagine. As she grabbed her go bag from its hiding place, always prepared, always ready, Sarah knew her carefully constructed ordinary life was over. But as the first shots shattered the front windows of her beloved café, something else stirred within her, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in 15 years. The time for hiding was over. The hunt had begun, but this time she wouldn't be the prey. The storage room of Lighthouse Coffee concealed more than just coffee beans and paper supplies. Sarah pulled aside a stack of flattened cardboard boxes, revealing a steel door built flush with the wall, a modification she'd made during renovations years ago, explaining it away to contractors as extra security for expensive equipment. She punched a 6-digit code into the keypad, and the door unlocked with a soft click. "This way," she ordered Pierce, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command that had been dormant for 15 years. "There's a tunnel that connects to the boathouse behind the property." They slipped through the doorway just as the sound of breaking glass and splintering wood signaled the intruders had forced their way into the café. Sarah sealed the door behind them, activating a secondary locking mechanism that would buy them precious minutes. The narrow tunnel was dimly lit by emergency LEDs along the floor, another unnecessary Security feature that had raised eyebrows during installation, but that Sarah had insisted upon. The passage sloped gently downward before leveling out beneath. The property line. You built an escape tunnel for a coffee shop? Pierce asked incredulously as they moved quickly through the confined space. I built an escape route for a woman who knew someone might eventually come looking for her, Sarah replied without slowing. Paranoia keeps you alive in our line of work. At the end of the 100-yard passage, they emerged into a small boathouse directly on the harbor. Inside was a sleek 17-foot Boston ware, powerful, maneuverable, and most importantly, untraceable. Sarah had purchased it with cash 5 years ago through a series of intermediaries, registering it under one of her contingency identities. They'll have the streets blocked by now, she said, tossing her go bag into the boat and moving to release the mooring lines. Water gives us our best chance. Pierce didn't question her assessment, immediately helping to prepare the boat for departure. Where are we headed? Safe house about 12 miles up the coast, Sarah replied, her hands moving with practice. Efficiency over the controls. Somewhere I can get answers. Starting with exactly who you are and what you know about Silver Crescent. The boat's engine hummed to life, a specially modified system that ran quieter than standard models. Sarah guided it out of the boathouse and into the darkness of the harbor, navigating by memory and the faint outline of marker buoys. Only when they were well away from the docks did she switch on the running lights, setting course northward along the coastline. Behind them, red and blue emergency lights pulsed in the night as police converged on Lighthouse Coffee. Sarah felt a pang of regret for the business she'd built and the life she was leaving behind. 15 years of careful anonymity dissolved in less than 15 minutes. You need to tell me everything, she said to Pierce, eyes fixed on the dark water. Ahead, no more cryptic warnings. Who sent those men, and what do they want? Pierce braced himself against the boat's movement, his expression grim in the dim instrument lighting. Admiral Victor Reynolds is weeks away from Senate confirmation as the next Director of Special Operations Command. He's built his career on the successes of operations like Silver Crescent operations that went sideways but were covered up and repackaged as victories. Reynolds? Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. He was Deputy Director of Intelligence when Silver Crescent was planned. His signature was on the operational orders. He was more than that, Pierce continued. He was the architect of the entire operation and the one who fed compromised intelligence through the chain of command. He sacrificed your team to protect a network of assets who were actually double agents working for a private military contractor called Sentinel Shield. The name struck Sarah like a physical blow. Sentinel Shield had been a shadowy presence in several theaters of operation, their personnel often blurring the lines between legitimate security contracts and mercenary activities. They operated in the gray areas of international law, taking on assignments that legitimate military forces couldn't touch. Westfield suspected something wasn't right with the intelligence, Sarah said, memories flooding back. He delayed our insertion by 12 hours, demanding additional verification. I always thought that delay was what got us compromised. It was the opposite, Pierce replied. Reynolds was counting on immediate execution of the operation. The delay gave Westfield time to quietly alert a contact at the CIA about his concerns. When Reynolds found out, he accelerated the timeline and deliberately fed your team false coordinates. Sarah's mind raced, reassembling the pieces of that night with this new information. So it wasn't just bad intel. It was an intentional setup. Your team wasn't supposed to survive at all, Pierce said quietly. The ambush was designed to eliminate everyone. When you made it out with survivors, Reynolds had to create a fall guy, or in your case, a fall woman. Your record made you the perfect scapegoat, controversial from the beginning as one of the first women in the program, constantly having to prove yourself. He calculated correctly that most people would find it easier to believe you failed than to question the entire chain of command. Sarah navigated around a series of rocks jutting from the dark water, the boat slicing through waves with practiced precision. And Westfield? Why didn't he speak up? He tried. When he pushed too hard, they threatened his family. Then they buried him in the Pentagon with a promotion that took him out of the operational loop. By the time he had gathered enough evidence to reopen the case, he started experiencing heart problems. Pierce's tone made the quotation marks audible. The timing of all this, Reynolds pending confirmation, Westfield's death, someone accessing the files, it can't be coincidence, Sarah reasoned, her tactical mind reassessing the situation. With each new piece of information. It's not, Pierce confirmed. 1 month ago, a journalist named Elena Diaz began investigating ties between Sentinel Shield and several high-ranking military officials. She uncovered financial transactions linking Reynolds to offshore accounts that received payments following operations where Sentinel Shield benefited. Silver Crescent was one of those operations. What happened to Diaz? She went dark 3 weeks ago. Her editor received a message saying she was pursuing a major lead, then nothing. Her apartment was ransacked, her computer missing. The official investigation is treating it as a random burglary, possibly with kidnapping. Sarah digested this information as the coastline slipped by, rocky outcroppings giving way to the thick pine forests that characterized the stretch of shoreline. After 15 minutes of silence, she guided the boat toward a small inlet nearly invisible from the main waterway. "We're here," she announced, cutting the engine and allowing momentum to carry them the final distance to a weather-beaten dock. Extending from the shore, the moonlight revealed a small cabin nestled among the trees, its windows dark, its presence unobtrusive. As they secured the boat, Sarah remained vigilant, scanning the surrounding area for any sign of pursuit or surveillance. The safe house had been her first purchase after settling in Newport Harbor, a contingency plan she hoped she'd never need but prepared nonetheless. Like everything in her post-SEAL life, it was registered under an alias and paid for with cash, accumulated through various legitimate but untraceable channels. Inside, the cabin was spare but functional. A main room with basic furniture, a kitchenette with non-perishable supplies, a bedroom, and a bathroom. Solar panels provided minimal electricity, and a wood stove offered heat. Most importantly, it contained a secure satellite communication system hidden beneath the floorboards, technology that would be considered outdated for civilian use, but remained effective for its purpose. "We have about 6 hours before they track us here," Sarah stated matter-of-factly, activating the cabin's perimeter sensors. "That gives us time to make contact with your sources and verify your story." Pierce raised an eyebrow. "You still don't trust me?" "I haven't trusted anyone in 15 years, Sarah replied, retrieving a hidden weapon from beneath a loose floorboard. "And I'm not about to start with someone who shows up the same day armed men try to kill me." She checked the Glock methodically, muscle memory guiding her hands through the familiar routine of inspection. "You said Reynolds is eliminating everyone connected to Silver Crescent. That would include you. Why are you still breathing?" "Because until 3 days ago, I wasn't a threat," Pierce explained. "I was just another retired SEAL asking uncomfortable questions. But when Westfield died, he left me a key to a safety deposit box. Inside was a flash drive with encrypted files that prove Reynolds sold out your team and has been working with Sentinel Shield for years. Where's this flash drive now?" "In the hands of the one person Reynolds can't reach, FBI Assistant Director Catherine Holly. She was Westfield's goddaughter and has been quietly building a case against Reynolds for months. The problem is, without you, the only surviving witness from the operation, the evidence is circumstantial." Sarah absorbed this, weighing the implications. After years of living in the shadows, the possibility of vindication seemed almost unimaginable. But experience had taught her that hope was often the most dangerous emotion in their line of work. "I need proof that what you're saying is true," she insisted. "And I need to contact my people to make sure they're safe." "Your people?" Pierce questioned. "The staff at my café. Particularly Mia. If Reynolds is thorough, and men like him always are, he'll use them to get to me." Sarah activated the satellite system, establishing a secure connection through a series of proxies. Her first call was to an unlisted number. "Lighthouse Flowers," answered a gruff voice that had never arranged a bouquet in his life. "Marcus, it's me." "Status." "Report." "Jesus Blackwood, you don't waste time," Marcus Reynolds replied, the sound of typing audible in the background. "Your cafe is crawling with local PD, and some guys who definitely aren't local PD. Chief of police is telling reporters it was an attempted robbery gone wrong. 3 suspects fled the scene, officers in pursuit, blah blah blah. Any casualties?" "None reported, but they're looking for you. APB just went out armed and dangerous. Approach with caution. They're spinning it like you shot at the robbers and then fled the scene." Sarah processed this with clinical detachment. "And Pierce, what did you find?" A pause then. Commander Jackson Pierce, SEAL Team 3, honorably discharged 8 months ago after 20 years of service. Exemplary record. Last assignment was to the Pentagon as liaison to Naval Special Warfare Command. Worked directly under James Westfield for his final 3 years of service. "So his credentials check out," Sarah acknowledged, glancing at Pierce. "What about Mia Chun?" "Early 20s, works at my cafe." More typing sounds. "No police reports mentioning her." "Wait, according to social media, she's at an art gallery opening downtown. Posted a photo 30 minutes ago." Relief washed through Sarah, though she kept her expression neutral. "I need you to get a message to her. Tell her to go to her cousin in Seattle, the one she visited last Christmas. Tell her it's a coffee emergency. That's our code for serious trouble." "She understand. I'll handle it," Marcus assured her. "What's your next move?" "I need to speak with FBI Assistant Director Catherine Hawley. Can you establish a secure line?" Marcus whistled low. "You're not thinking small, are you? Give me an hour. I'll call back on this connection." The line went dead, and Sarah turned to Pierce. "Your story checks out. At least the parts I can verify. Now we wait." While they waited, Sarah prepared the cabin for potential defensive operations. She checked sight lines, identified potential cover, and cataloged the weapons and supplies available to them. Pierce assisted without being asked, his movements reflecting the same training and mindset. "Westfield talked about you," Pierce said, as they worked. "He said you were the best tactical thinker he'd ever encountered. Said you could read a battlefield like most people read a book." Sarah continued her preparations without responding immediately. After a moment, she said, "Westfield was the only person who believed in me when everyone else saw a liability. The program I was part of wasn't supposed to exist. Women weren't officially allowed in SEAL teams then. I was part of a classified initiative to assess female operators for special missions where traditional teams might be at a disadvantage. Like intelligence gathering in environments where women had greater access." Pierce nodded. "I heard rumors about the program." "It was more than that," Sarah corrected him. "It was about testing whether the physical standards were actually relevant to mission success, whether different approaches to the same problems might yield better results. I passed every test they threw at me, met every standard, but it was never enough. There were always people like Reynolds who believed women didn't belong, period. And when Silver Crescent went bad, it confirmed what they already believed," Sarah finished, "that the program was a mistake. That I was a mistake." She checked the ammunition for the 3rd backup weapon, her movements precise and controlled. "After the court-martial, they shut down the program entirely. 15 years of progress, erased because of a lie. The satellite phone buzzed before Pierce could respond. Sarah activated it immediately. "You've got 5 minutes," Marcus's voice came through. "Line to Holly is secure, but can't stay that way long. She's on a burner phone." The connection transferred, and a new voice, female, authoritative, came on the line. "This is Holly. I'm told you're the ghost of Silver Crescent. And I'm told you have evidence that could clear my name," Sarah replied. "Westfield believed in you," Holly said. "He spent years collecting evidence against Reynolds. The flash drive contains financial records, communications, operational details that were scrubbed from official reports. But without testimony from someone who was there, it's not enough for an indictment." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Sarah questioned, though she already suspected the answer. "Come in, testify. Help us build the case against Reynolds before his confirmation hearing next week. With your testimony and Westfield's evidence, we can stop him and expose Sentinel Shield's operations." Sarah laughed without humor. "You're asking me to trust the same system that destroyed my career and let Reynolds flourish for 15 years? To walk back into the lion's den and hope that this time the lions aren't hungry? I'm asking you to finish what you started 15 years ago," Holly countered. "To honor the men who died under your command by exposing the truth about why they died. Reynolds isn't just going to be confirmed, he's being positioned for even greater power. This may be our only chance to stop him." The words struck a chord deep within Sarah. For 15 years, she had lived with the weight of those deaths, carrying the burden of perceived failure. The possibility of setting the record straight, of giving meaning to their sacrifices, pulled at something she'd thought long buried. "Even if I wanted to, Reynolds has already set a kill team after me," Sarah pointed out. "I won't make it to Washington alive." "That's why you need to disappear until we can arrange secure transport," Holly replied. "I can have a team to you in 36 hours. Until then, stay off the grid." "Too late for that," Marcus cut in urgently. "Satellite thermal imaging just picked up multiple approaching vehicles on the access road to your location. You've got company coming, at least 6 heat signatures, moving in tactical formation." Sarah's training kicked in immediately. "Time to target?" 8 minutes, maybe less." She looked at Pierce, who was already gathering essential supplies. "Looks like Reynolds' men work faster than we anticipated. We need to move, now." "Wait," Hale's voice came through the speaker. "Before you go, there's something else you should know. Elena Diaz, the journalist investigating Reynolds? She managed to send one last message to her editor before she disappeared. She claimed to have found evidence that Silver Crescent wasn't just about protecting Sentinel Shield's double agents. It was about covering up a black site operation codenamed Meridian." Sarah froze. "Meridian? You're sure that was the name?" "Positive. Does it mean something to you?" "It was a location we were specifically ordered to avoid during the operation coordinates that were marked as a restricted area on our mission maps. We were told it was a CIA intelligence gathering outpost. Whatever it was, it's connected to why Reynolds is willing to kill to keep Silver Crescent buried," Holly said urgently. "Find Diaz, find what she knows about Meridian, and we might have enough to bring down not just Reynolds, but the entire network he's protecting." The connection cut off as Marcus returned. 6 minutes. "They're moving faster now." "We'll be in touch," Sarah said, terminating the call and quickly disassembling the satellite equipment. "Head for the secondary extraction point. I'll find you there." Pierce looked at her sharply. "We're not staying together?" "2 targets are harder to track than one," Sarah replied, her voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "And I need to know if you can be trusted. When there's no one watching, consider it a test." She handed him a small GPS device. "Secondary extraction point is programmed in. I'll meet you there in 3 hours. If I don't show, assume I've been compromised and contact Holly." Pierce took the device. his expression torn between professional understanding and personal concern. "This is a bad tactical decision. We're stronger together." "It's not about tactics," Sarah replied, checking her weapons one last time. "It's about trust. 15 years ago, I trusted the wrong people, and 4 good men died. I won't make that mistake again." Without waiting for a response, she moved toward the rear exit of the cabin, pausing only briefly at the door. 3 hours. Don't be late. Outside, the pre-dawn air carried the scent of pine and salt water. Sarah moved through the trees with the silent efficiency that had once made her legendary among her peers, becoming one with the shadows as she circled around toward where the intruders would be approaching. For 15 years, she had run from her past. Now she was running toward it, toward the truth about Silver Crescent, toward justice for her fallen teammates, toward the woman she had once been. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood was back in the field, and this time she was hunting. Sarah moved through the forest with practiced stealth, her body remembering patterns of movement that had lain dormant for 15 years. The forest floor whispered beneath her feet, pine needles cushioning each deliberate step as she circled behind the approaching tactical team. Years of running the harbor's perimeter in pre-dawn darkness had kept her physically capable, but the heightened awareness, the calculated risk assessment, the complete immersion in the moment, felt like reawakening a part of herself she'd buried alongside her true identity. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten, casting the forest in deep blue shadows. Sarah paused behind a large cedar, controlling her breathing as she studied the 6-person team move in toward her cabin. Their formation was tight and professional, clearly military trained, not local law enforcement. They communicated with hand signals, weapons at the ready, moving with the coordinated precision that spoke of extensive shared experience. These weren't random mercenaries. They were a specialized kill team. Rather than retreating further into the forest, Sarah shadowed them, staying just outside their perimeter awareness. Knowledge was tactical advantage, and she needed to understand who she was dealing with before she could formulate her next move. The team leader signaled a halt about 50 yards from the cabin. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, his movements economical and confident. Something about his silhouette triggered recognition in Sarah's memory. The distinctive way he held his weapon, the slight cant of his head as he assessed the target. She'd seen him before, years ago, in an operational theater halfway around the world. Garrison, former Delta Force operator who had transitioned to private sector work around the same time Sarah had been court-martialed. She'd crossed paths with him during a joint operation in Northern Africa, competent, ruthless, and utterly devoted to whatever mission he accepted. If Reynolds had recruited Garrison, it confirmed the seriousness of the threat. The team split into 3 pairs, moving to surround the cabin. Sarah remained motionless, calculating options. She could slip away now, using the distraction of their assault on the empty cabin to put distance between herself and the team. It was the logical choice, the safer path. But safety hadn't been her priority since the moment Pierce had walked into her café. Instead, she chose a more dangerous course, one that might yield critical information. As 2 operators positioned themselves at the rear of the cabin, Sarah silently closed the distance, keeping to the shadows cast by the dense tree line. The operators were professional enough to maintain tactical silence, but they wore communications gear that would allow them to receive instructions. If she could access one of their radios, she might intercept valuable intelligence about Reynolds' operation. Sarah waited until one operator moved to check the perimeter while his partner covered the cabin's rear exit. In the moment of separation, she made her move. Swift and silent, she emerged from the shadows behind the isolated operator. Her strike was precise, a forearm across the throat, cutting off both air and sound, while her other hand simultaneously disabled his weapon. The operator struggled briefly, But Sarah had the advantages of surprise and leverage. Within seconds, he lost consciousness, and she lowered him silently to the ground. Quickly, she removed his radio earpiece and tactical vest, noting with grim satisfaction that his equipment was top-tier, further confirmation that Reynolds was sparing no expense in his cleanup operation. She dragged the unconscious man deeper into the forest, securing him with his own restraints before moving back toward the cabin. With the radio now in her ear, Sarah could hear the team's communications. Bravo team in position. Alpha team ready to breach. Charlie team covering east perimeter. The team leader's voice came through clearly. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1. The synchronized breach was textbook perfect simultaneous entry from multiple points. Flashbang. Deployment, immediate room clearing procedures. Sarah observed from the tree line as the team quickly determined the cabin was empty. Target location compromised. No sign of primary or secondary. The team leader's voice held controlled frustration. Command, requesting further instructions. A new voice responded through the older, authoritative, with the unmistakable cadence of someone accustomed to giving orders that were obeyed without question. Secure any intel at the location, then burn it down. No traces. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. Victor Reynolds himself was directing the operation. This wasn't a delegated cleanup, it was personal to him. Sir, we're one man down. Lopez isn't responding. A pause then. Find him. Then, complete your mission. If they left this location, they can't have gone far. The female target is priority 1. Former SEAL, highly trained, considered extremely dangerous. The male target is secondary, but still a threat. Understood, sir. What about local authorities? Fire will bring them. Let it burn. By the time they respond, you'll be clear. We have assets in local law enforcement who will manage the investigation. Sarah had heard enough. Reynolds' reach extended further than she'd anticipated, including assets in local police. She needed to warn Pierce and establish contact with Hawley through a different channel. As the team began searching for their missing comrade, Sarah retreated deeper into the forest, plotting a course that would take her to the coastline north of the cabin. The secondary extraction point was an abandoned lighthouse 5 miles up. The coast accessible by both land and sea, with multiple escape routes. But first, she needed transportation. Moving on foot would leave her too exposed once daylight fully arrived. Sarah navigated through the dense forest, paralleling the coastal road without exposing herself to potential surveillance. After 20 minutes of steady movement, she reached a small clearing where a local fishing camp maintained several all-terrain vehicles for guest use. In the off-season, they sat mostly unused, secured only by a simple chain and padlock. Using skills she hadn't needed since her undercover operations, Sarah disabled the lock and quickly hot-wired one of the vehicles. She felt a pang of regret at the theft. 15 years of building a reputation as an honest business owner made even necessary crimes feel wrong, but she pushed the feeling aside. She would find a way to make anonymous restitution later, assuming she survived. The EDV provided faster transportation through the wooded coastal terrain, allowing her to stay off main roads while making good time toward the lighthouse. As she rode, Sarah processed what she had learned. Reynolds was personally overseeing the operation to silence her, which meant she represented a significant threat to him. The mention of Meridian had clearly struck a nerve, whatever had happened. At that black site during Silver Crescent was the key to understanding why Reynolds had betrayed her team. The lighthouse came into view as Sarah crested a small hill overlooking the coastline. The structure stood sentinel on a rocky promontory, abandoned decades ago when automated navigation systems had rendered it obsolete. Its weathered exterior and boarded windows gave no indication that it had been repurposed as an emergency rendezvous point by someone with extensive tactical planning experience. Sarah approached cautiously, leaving the TV concealed in dense underbrush before proceeding on foot. The perimeter appeared undisturbed, the subtle markers she had established during previous reconnaissance still in their exact positions. No one had approached the lighthouse recently except perhaps Pierce. Using a series of carefully placed handholds, Sarah scaled the seaward side of the structure, bypassing the more obvious ground-level entry points. A narrow window near the top provided access to the lamp room, its boards secured with nails designed to appear solid while actually being easily removable from the outside. She slipped inside, weapon drawn, scanning the circular space for any sign of threat or compromise. The room was empty except for basic survival equipment cached there months earlier. No sign of Pierce. Sarah checked her watch. Nearly 30 minutes remained before their agreed meeting time. She used the opportunity to establish a defensive position, identifying optimal firing angles and potential escape routes should the lighthouse be compromised. A slight noise from the stairwell below brought her to immediate readiness, weapon trained on the access point. The footsteps were deliberate, not attempting stealth, someone who wanted her to hear their approach. "It's Pierce," called a familiar voice. "Coming up." "I'm alone." Sarah maintained her position, weapon still aimed. Authentication phrase? "The tide is turning," Pierce replied without hesitation. Sarah lowered her weapon as he emerged into the lamp room. He appeared unharmed, though his clothing showed signs of hard travel through difficult terrain. "You made good time," she observed, holstering her weapon but maintaining tactical awareness of their surroundings. "Borrowed a boat from a vacation cabin down the coast," Pierce explained. "Figured water approach was safer than land. I left. It's secured in a cove about half a mile south." Sarah nodded approval. "Smart. The cabin's been compromised." Reynolds' team arrived 6-man tactical unit led by a former Delta operator named Garrison. "You encountered them?" Pierce's expression showed concern. "Briefly, acquired some intelligence." Sarah tapped the radio earpiece. "Reynolds is personally directing the operation. He's got assets in local law enforcement, which means we can't trust official channels for extraction." Pierce absorbed this information, his face grim. "Hawley warned me that Reynolds' network was extensive, but having him directly involved elevates the threat significantly." "Did you learn anything else?" "Just confirmation that whatever Meridian was, it's central to Reynolds' motivation. He specifically ordered the team to eliminate all traces of the cabin, burn it down, destroy any evidence." "That tracks with what I know about his methods," Pierce said, moving to the window to scan the surrounding area. When Westfield first started investigating Silver Crescent, 3 separate classified archives containing operational records mysteriously experienced storage failures. Digital files corrupted, physical documents destroyed inconveniently. Localized fires. Sarah joined him at the window, her mind working through implications. "We need to find Elena Diaz. If she uncovered information about Meridian significant enough to make Reynolds panic, she's our best lead to understanding what really happened." "Agreed, but finding a missing journalist who doesn't want to be found won't be easy, especially with Reynolds' resources deployed against us." Sarah's expression hardened with determination. "I spent 15 years hiding from people who wanted to find me. I know how to think like someone who doesn't want to be found." She moved to the emergency pack stored at the lighthouse, retrieving a secure satellite phone different from the one she'd used at the cabin. "We need to contact Marcus without exposing our location. If Diaz is still alive, she have established communication protocols with her editor, dead drops, emergency contacts, verification systems." As Sarah dialed, Pierce continued monitoring the surrounding area. "Reynolds won't stop with just the cabin. He'll expand the search perimeter, probably bring in additional assets." "Which is why we need to move quickly," Sarah agreed as the connection established. "Marcus, it's Blackwood." Secure Channel 7. Jesus, you're still alive, Marcus responded, relief evident in his voice. Local news is reporting a forest fire at a remote cabin up the coast from Newport Harbor. 3. Suspects reportedly spotted fleeing the scene. Reynolds is controlling the narrative, Sarah confirmed. We need information on Elena Diaz's last known location, contacts, methods of operation. Anything that might help us track her movement after she went dark. Already on it, Marcus replied. After our last conversation, I pulled everything I could find on her. Professional history, bylines, social media. She's good, very careful about digital footprints, uses secure communications. Most of her recent work focused on private military contractors and their government connections. Any patterns to her investigation methods? Places she might go to ground? She has a history of using specific sources for stories about classified operations, former military personnel, mostly. One name kept appearing in her article acknowledgments: James Rivera, former Marine Corps intelligence, dishonorably discharged in 2017 after blowing the whistle on contractor abuses in Syria. Sarah exchanged a look with Pierce. Location? Last known address is in Portland, about 4 hours north of your position. But here's the interesting part. Rivera owns a hunting cabin near Mount Hood. Property records show it's registered under a shell company, but I traced the ownership. It's the kind of place someone might use as a safe house. Coordinates? Marcus rattled off the location. One more thing, Mia is safe. She's on her way to Seattle as suggested. But she's asking questions. Said something was missing from the café's storage room, a box of old papers you kept locked in your desk. Sarah's expression tightened. The papers weren't important. It's Mia I'm worried about. Reynolds is thorough, he'll track anyone connected to me. I've arranged protection, Marcus assured her. Off the books, people I trust. They'll keep her safe until this is resolved. Thank you, Sarah said, genuine gratitude in her voice. We'll head for Rivera's cabin. Keep this channel open for emergency contact only. After ending the call, Sarah turned to Pierce. We need transportation that can't be easily tracked. The ATV and your borrowed boat are temporary solutions at best. Pierce nodded. There's a marina about 3 miles south. This time of year, it's mostly weekenders who won't notice a missing boat until days later. Then we head there, acquire transportation, and make for Mount Hood, Sarah decided. If Diaz found evidence about Meridian significant enough to go into hiding, Rivera's cabin is the most logical place for her to seek shelter. As they prepared to leave the lighthouse, Pierce paused, studying Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. You've adapted quickly for someone who's been out of the field for 15 years. Some skills you never lose, Sarah replied, checking her weapon one final time. Like riding a bike or swimming, once your body learns, it remembers. It's more than that, Pierce observed. Most operators who leave the field, especially under circumstances like yours, they don't maintain this level of readiness. The safe houses, the escape routes, the cached supplies. You've been preparing for this day for 15 years. Sarah was silent for a moment, considering how much to reveal. Finally, she said, after Silver Crescent, I lost everything, my career, my identity, my purpose. But I never lost the training, the instincts that kept me alive when everyone else died. I promised myself that if they ever came for me again, I wouldn't be caught unprepared. And now they have, Pierce said quietly. Yes, Sarah agreed, her voice hardening with resolve. But this time, I'm not the one running scared. Reynolds thought he was hunting a coffee shop owner. He's about to discover he's hunting a SEAL. They departed the lighthouse as the morning sun crusted the horizon, casting long shadows across the rocky coastline. The journey to the marina proceeded without incident, both of them moving with the heightened awareness of trained operators in hostile territory. The marina was quiet, most boat owners still asleep in their homes or cabins. Sarah identified a suitable vessel, a 28-foot cruiser with twin outboard motors, built for speed and coastal navigation. The security was minimal, designed to deter casual thieves rather than determined professionals. Within 20 minutes, they were underway, the stolen boat cutting through morning swells as they headed north along the coastline. Sarah handled the controls with the same confidence she had once piloted military craft, her body remembering the rhythms of the sea. "We should reach Portland by early afternoon," Pierce said, studying a coastal chart. "From there, it's another 2 hours to Mount Hood, assuming we can acquire ground transportation." "I have resources in Portland," Sarah replied. A storage unit registered under another identity, containing emergency supplies, credentials, and currency. Pierce raised an eyebrow. "Just how many contingency plans did you establish?" "Enough to disappear completely if necessary," Sarah admitted. "After the court-martial, I created 6 separate identities with varying degrees of documentation. Sarah Morgan was just the one I chose to inhabit. And the others? Insurance policies. Ways to vanish if the past ever caught up with me." She guided the boat around a rocky outcropping, maintaining a course that kept them visible from shore, but not conspicuously so. "I never thought I'd need them to clear my name. I'd accepted that part of my life was over." As the coastline slipped past, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. For 15 years, she had lived as Sarah Morgan, a name chosen for its commonness, its ability to blend into any crowd. She had built a life defined by ordinariness, finding satisfaction in the simple rhythms of the café and the community she served. Yet beneath that carefully constructed identity, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood had always remained dormant but not dead, waiting for the moment when survival required her return. "Why a coffee shop?" Pierce asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "Of all the businesses you could have started, why that?" Sarah's lips curved in a small, genuine smile. "Have you ever watched people in a coffee shop? Really watched them? It's one of the few places where people from all walks of life intersect. The businessman in his suit, the construction worker on break, the student studying for exams, they all come through those doors." "And that appealed to you?" After years of operating in shadows, dealing with the darkest aspects of humanity, there was something healing about creating a space where normal life happened, where the most dangerous thing was a spilled latte or a missed connection. Pierce nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You weren't just hiding. You were creating something you never had in your previous life normalcy." "Maybe," Sarah acknowledged. "Or maybe I just make damn good coffee." The moment of levity passed quickly as the radio crackled to life, the one Sarah had taken from the operative at the cabin. The voice that came through was Garrison's, reporting to Reynolds. "Sir, we've expanded the search perimeter. Local harbor patrol reports a stolen boat from a marina 5 miles south of the cabin site. Description matches a vessel spotted heading north approximately 90 minutes ago." Reynolds' response was immediate and cold. "Alert assets in Portland. They'll be heading there for supplies or transportation. I want roadblocks, surveillance on transportation hubs. Use our contacts in local PD, but keep them in the dark about the real targets. As far as they know, they're looking for armed robbery suspects." "Yes, sir. And if they're located?" "Contain and eliminate. No witnesses, no complications." Sarah switched off the radio, her expression grim. "They've identified our transportation and projected our destination. Portland is compromised." Pierce's tactical mind shifted gears immediately. "Alternate approach?" "We bypass Portland entirely," Sarah decided, adjusting their course slightly. "There's a smaller marina near Astoria where we can dock without drawing attention. From there, we take back roads to Mount Hood." "Reynolds will have anticipated that possibility," Pierce warned. "He knows how you think." "He knows how Lieutenant Commander Blackwood thought 15 years ago," Sarah corrected. "He doesn't know the woman who spent 15 years watching." People, learning patterns, understanding how ordinary citizens move through the world unnoticed. That's our advantage. As the boat cut through increasingly choppy waters, Sarah felt a surge of determination. Reynolds had spent 15 years building his empire on the foundation of her destruction, ascending the ranks of military leadership while she poured coffee and baked muffins in a coastal town. But those 15 years hadn't been wasted. They had taught her patience, perspective, and the value of underestimation. Reynolds saw her as a loose end to be eliminated, a ghost from the past threatening his future. What he failed to understand was that ghosts sometimes returned not for vengeance, but for justice. And Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood had waited 15 years to set the record straight. The truth about Meridian, whatever it was, lay within reach. And with it, the possibility of reclaiming not just her name, but the honor of the team that had followed her into darkness all those years ago. "We're going to finish this," she said quietly, her voice carrying over the sound of the engines. "For Westfield, for my team, for everyone Reynolds has sacrificed to protect his secrets." Pierce nodded, his expression reflecting the same resolve. "The tide is turning," he said. And as the boat pressed northward, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that it was. The small marina near Astoria bustled with early morning activity as fishermen prepared for a day on the water. Sarah guided their stolen vessel toward a slip at the far end, away from the commercial area where they'd attract less attention. Her years running a business that catered to fishermen had taught her their rhythms when they came and went, what equipment they carried, how they moved and spoke. It was knowledge that now served a very different purpose. "Keep your head down," she instructed Pierce as they secured the boat. "Surveillance cameras at the main office and fuel dock. We want to be forgettable faces." They gathered their minimal gear and disembarked, Sarah leading them through a side exit that bypassed the harbormaster's office. The coastal town was waking up, morning traffic beginning to fill the streets as they made their way to a used car lot several blocks from the marina. "We need transportation that won't stand out," Sarah explained as they surveyed the modest selection. "Nothing too new, nothing too old, something forgettable." She settled on a 5-year-old Subaru Outback in faded blue, the Pacific Northwest. Equivalent of urban camouflage. The lot had just opened, a sleepy-eyed salesman more interested in his coffee than making conversation. Sarah paid cash using one of her alternate identities, and within 30 minutes they were heading east toward Mount Hood, leaving the coastal fog behind. "Reynolds will have surveillance on the main highways," Pierce noted as Sarah navigated through back roads, probably automated license plate readers at key intersections. "Which is why we're taking the scenic route," Sarah replied, turning onto a Forest Service road that meandered through dense pine forests. "It adds an hour to our journey but reduces the chance of electronic detection." As they drove, Pierce studied a satellite map of their destination. Rivera's cabin is isolated 5 acres surrounded by national forest land. Defensible position, but also a potential trap if Reynolds' team finds us there. "We'll do recon before approaching," Sarah assured him. "I've dealt with cornered journalists before. Diaz will be hypervigilant, possibly armed. We need to establish contact without triggering her survival instincts." The forested landscape opened occasionally to reveal glimpses of Mount Hood looming. In the distance, its snow-capped peak rising majestically against the blue sky. For brief moments, it almost felt like a normal day 2 people on a mountain drive, the world's troubles distant and theoretical. But the illusion shattered each time Sarah checked the rearview mirror, each time she took an unnecessary turn to ensure they weren't being followed. This wasn't a scenic drive, but a tactical approach to a potentially hostile situation. "Tell me about Diaz," Sarah requested as they climbed higher into the mountains. "What's her background? What drives her?" Pierce shifted in his seat, organizing his thoughts. Former military journalist, Served 4 years covering operations in Afghanistan before transitioning to civilian reporting. Built a reputation for thorough investigation and source protection. When military contractors became her focus 3 years ago, she started receiving threats. Her apartment was broken into twice, her computer stolen once. None of it deterred her. She sounds like someone who doesn't give up easily, Sarah observed. Westfield had similar impressions. He made contact with her about 6 months ago after she published an expose on Sentinel Shield's operations in Yemen. He wasn't her source for that story, but he recognized her methodology and attention to detail. When he began suspecting his heart problems weren't natural, he reached out to her with some of his initial findings about Reynolds. Sarah processed this information, her tactical mind identifying potential approaches. So she's likely to trust Westfield's connections, which gives us an opening. But she'd also be skeptical of anyone claiming to represent his interests. Exactly, Pierce confirmed. She'll have verification protocols and place code phrases, shared knowledge that only someone Westfield trusted would know. Do you have those credentials? Pierce nodded. Some of them. Westfield was careful about how much he shared with any single person. But he did give me something specific to share with Diaz if I needed to make contact. The Forest Service Road eventually connected with a less traveled highway that wound higher into the mountains. They stopped once for fuel at a small general store that catered to hikers and camping enthusiasts, Sarah purchasing supplies while Pierce handled the gas. Neither lingered longer than necessary, conscious that every interaction increased their exposure. By mid-afternoon, they reached the turnoff for the access road leading to Rivera's property. Sarah parked a half-mile from the actual driveway, concealing the vehicle among dense pines. We proceed on foot from here, she decided, checking her weapon. Standard approach pattern, 20-meter separation. I'll take point, you cover R. 6. Pierce nodded, the seamless shift into operational procedure revealing their shared training. They moved through the forest with practiced efficiency, communicating with hand signals when necessary, otherwise maintaining tactical silence. The cabin came into view after 15 minutes of careful advancement, a modest structure built of weathered logs, its position offering clear sightlines in all directions. Solar panels on the roof suggested it operated off-grid, while a satellite dish indicated connectivity despite the remote location. Sarah observed the property through compact binoculars, noting subtle signs of occupation, recently split firewood, condensation on windows suggesting interior heating, a thin wisp of smoke from the chimney carefully diffused to minimize visibility. More telling were the security measures trail cameras disguised as birdhouses, trip wires concealed among fallen branches, and what appeared to be pressure plates beneath scattered leaves on the main approach path. The tactical discussion was interrupted by a shrill alarm from one of Rivera's monitoring systems. He wheeled himself to the computer, typing rapidly. Perimeter alert, southeast quadrant. Someone just tripped the outer sensors. Diaz moved instantly to the windows, checking sight lines while staying concealed behind curtains. How many? Heat signatures indicate at least 4 individuals moving in tactical formation, Rivera reported, studying thermal imaging from hidden cameras. Their good bypassed most of the obvious triggers. Reynolds' team found us faster than expected, Sarah concluded, drawing her weapon. We need to assume they have the cabin surrounded. Pierce joined Diaz at the windows, carefully assessing the situation. Standard containment approach. They'll establish a perimeter, then close in gradually, looking to capture if possible, eliminate if necessary. Sarah's mind raced through options, calculating risks and probabilities with the cold efficiency that had once made her an exceptional commander. We need to split up. Diaz and Rivera take the evidence north through the emergency exit Rivera, undoubtedly built into this place. She glanced at Rivera, who nodded confirmation. Pierce and I will create a diversion to the south, Draw their attention away from your escape route. Once you're clear, make contact with Hawley, Pierce added. We'll rendezvous at the secondary location we discussed earlier. Diaz hesitated, clearly torn between the mission and leaving others to face danger. You're sure about this? It's the only play that gives the evidence a chance of reaching Hawley, Sarah insisted. And I've been waiting 15 years to face the people who destroyed my team. I'm not running anymore. The journalist recognized the resolve in Sarah's eyes and nodded once, sharply. There's a tunnel access in the root cellar. Comes out in a drainage culvert about 300 yards north of here. We have a vehicle cached beyond that. Go, Sarah ordered. You have 10 minutes to clear the area before we engage. As Diaz and Rivera gathered the critical evidence and disappeared through a concealed trapdoor, Sarah and Pierce prepared for battle. They moved with the synchronized efficiency of operators who had trained for exactly such scenarios, positioning themselves for maximum tactical advantage. Just like old times, Pierce commented dryly as they distributed spare ammunition. Except this time, we know who the real enemy is, Sarah replied, checking sight lines through windows. No more fighting shadows or being manipulated into someone else's agenda. The thermal scanners showed Reynolds' team advancing steadily toward the cabin, using terrain features for cover. Sarah recognized the approach pattern standard naval special warfare containment procedure, designed to minimize risk while establishing complete control of the target area. They're expecting resistance but not expertise, she observed. They think they're hunting a journalist and a retired intelligence officer with a prosthetic leg. Their mistake, Pierce agreed, positioning himself to cover the southern approach. Ready when you are, Commander. The title, one she hadn't heard directed at her in 15 years, stirred something deep within Sarah. Not pride or nostalgia, but a sense of rightness, of identity reclaimed. For 15 years, she had lived as someone else, buried her true self beneath layers of careful construction. Now, in this moment of crisis, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood had fully resurfaced. On my mark, she said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had once led elite operators through the world's most dangerous environments. 3, 2, 1, execute. Their counter-ambush unfolded with lethal precision. Sarah fired first, disabling the surveillance drone that Reynolds' team had deployed as advance reconnaissance. Pierce followed immediately with carefully placed shots that forced 2 operators to abandon their positions and seek new cover. The response was immediate and fierce, concentrated fire directed at the cabin's windows and doors. But Sarah and Pierce had already relocated to secondary positions, using the cabin's architecture to create confusion about their exact location. Moving to Phase 2, Sarah announced calmly as she slipped through a side window while Pierce maintained suppressive fire. She landed silently on the ground outside, using the cabin's shadow for concealment as she circled behind the approaching team. Years of running the harbor's perimeter in preyed-on darkness had kept her physical conditioning at near operational levels. She moved through the forest with the silent efficiency that had once been her trademark, flanking Reynolds' team before they realized the threat had expanded beyond the cabin's walls. The first operator never saw her coming, a quick strike to the base of the skull, rendering him unconscious before he could alert his teammates. The second turned just in time to see Sarah emerge from the shadows, his reaction slowed by the split second of surprise that proved decisive. Inside the cabin, Pierce maintained the illusion of 2 defenders, firing from multiple positions to create the impression of greater numbers. The diversion worked exactly as intended, keeping the remaining operators focused on the cabin while Sarah systematically reduced their effectiveness from behind. The operation took less than 6 minutes from start to finish. 3 operators incapacitated, the 4th pinned down and cut off from his team. Sarah approached the final operator with her weapon-trained center mass, leaving no doubt about the outcome if he chose to resist. "Stand down," she ordered, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Weapon on the ground, hands where I can see them. The operator, younger than the others, less experienced, hesitated only briefly before complying. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Someone who should have died 15 years ago, according to your boss," Sarah replied evenly. "Radio Admiral Reynolds. Tell him Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood sends her regards." The young operator's eyes widened with recognition. "You're the SEAL from Silver Crescent. They told us you were just a disgraced officer gone rogue, threatening national security." "They lied," Sarah stated flatly. "Just like they lied about why my team died. Just like they're lying about why they want me silenced now. Make the call." With Pierce covering him, the operator activated his radio. "Command, this is Alpha 4. Target location is compromised. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood has tactical control of the situation and wishes to communicate directly." There was a long pause before Reynolds' voice came through the speaker, cold with controlled fury. "Put her on." Sarah took the radio, holding it at arm's length to avoid any potential remote detonation, a precaution that came from bitter experience with enemies who viewed their own personnel as expendable. "Hello, Admiral," she said, her voice steady despite the surge of emotions that accompanied finally confronting the architect of her downfall. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough, apparently," Reynolds replied. "I'm impressed you've survived this long, Commander. Not many could disappear so thoroughly." "I had good motivation," Sarah countered. "Watching 4 good operators die for nothing tends to focus one's survival instincts." "They didn't die for nothing," Reynolds corrected, a hint of arrogance creeping into his voice. "They died for national security. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." "Is that what you tell yourself about the 137 civilians who died at Meridian?" Sarah asked, satisfaction flowing through her as silence greeted her question. "That's right, Admiral. We know about the weapons test, the diverted funds, all of it. And by this time tomorrow, so will the Senate Confirmation Committee." When Reynolds spoke again, his voice had hardened to granite. "You have no idea what forces you're interfering with, Commander. This goes far beyond one operation or one weapon system. Stand down now, and perhaps we can negotiate terms that allow you to disappear again, permanently this time, with resources to ensure your comfort." Sarah laughed without humor. "I spent 15 years hiding, Admiral. I'm done negotiating, done running, done pretending to be someone else. You took everything from me, my career, my identity, my team. Now I'm going to return the favor." "You won't make it to Washington alive," Reynolds stated with cold certainty. "Every law enforcement agency in the country has your description. Every transportation hub is being monitored. Even if you somehow evaded my teams, you'd be arrested the moment you approached any government building. Who said anything about Washington?" Sarah replied, allowing a hint of satisfaction to color her tone. "While we've been having this lovely chat, everything, all the evidence, all the documentation of your crimes is being delivered to FBI Assistant Director Hawley. By the time this call ends, she have enough to secure indictments against you and everyone involved in the Meridian cover-up." The silence that followed told Sarah everything she needed to know. Reynolds was recalculating, reassessing, realizing that his carefully constructed empire was crumbling around him. "It's over, Admiral," she continued. "The only question remaining is whether you face justice with dignity or spend your final hours of freedom trying to eliminate witnesses to postpone the inevitable." Reynolds' response was immediate and chilling. "Kill them all," he ordered through the radio. "Burn everything." Sarah had anticipated this, already moving toward cover as she dropped the radio. In the distance, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors cut through the mountain air-heavy reinforcements inbound, likely with orders to leave no survivors. "Time to go," she called to Pierce, who had already secured their exit route. Reynolds just played his final card. They moved through the forest at a dead run, heading not north as Reynolds would expect, but west, toward a steep ravine that offered both cover and access to a secondary escape route. Behind them, the sound of helicopter rotors grew louder, accompanied by the distant crack of rifles as new teams deployed around the cabin. Diaz and Rivera should be clear by now, Pierce said as they navigated through dense underbrush. They had at least 15 minutes head start. And the evidence is already transmitting to Halle, Sarah confirmed. Rivera had a satellite uplink system in place, began broadcasting everything the moment they were clear of the cabin. They reached the ravine and descended rapidly, using natural features for cover as they put distance between themselves and the helicopter's search pattern. The steep terrain slowed their progress, but also provided protection from aerial surveillance. Command was always your strength, Pierce observed as they paused to check their bearings. Even now, you're 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Sarah allowed herself a brief smile. Not command. Contingency planning. When everything goes wrong, you need to have already imagined the worst and prepared for it. And what's our contingency now? Pierce asked. Reynolds will throw everything. He has it preventing us from reaching civilization. We don't need to reach civilization, Sarah replied, checking her compass. We just need to stay alive for the next few hours while justice catches up with Admiral Reynolds. They continued their descent, eventually reaching a fast-flowing stream that would help mask their heat signatures from thermal imaging. The helicopter continued to circle above, but its search pattern suggested confusion about their direction of travel. They expected us to head north toward the main road, Pierce noted as they waded through knee-deep water. Standard escape and evasion protocol. Which is why we're not following protocol, Sarah agreed. Reynolds knows how SEALs are trained to think, but he doesn't know how coffee shop owners think. Pierce laughed despite the tension of their situation. And how do coffee shop owners think? Practically, Sarah replied. When you deal with everyday people, real people, not operators or intelligence analysts, you learn that the most direct route isn't always through force or confrontation. Sometimes it's through patience, through letting events unfold while you simply endure. The stream led them to a wider river flowing southwest, away from the area where Reynolds' forces were concentrating their search. As they followed its course, the sounds of helicopter rotors gradually faded into the distance. After nearly an hour of steady movement, they reached a small clearing where Sarah stopped, checking her watch. We should be within range now. She removed a compact satellite phone from her pack, different from the one they'd used previously, and dialed a secure number. Marcus status report. It's happening, Marcus replied, his voice vibrating with suppressed excitement. Halle. Received the evidence package an hour ago. FBI teams are moving on Reynolds' location as we speak. 3 of his closest associates at the Pentagon have already been taken into custody. It's all over the news, breaking. Admiral nominated for Special Operations Command facing war crimes charges. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, 15 years of weight lifting from her shoulders. And Diaz, Rivera? Safe, under FBI protection as material witnesses. Diaz is already working with major news outlets to release the full story. And Mia? Still in Seattle, still safe. Asking a lot of questions about her boss, who apparently isn't who she thought she was. Sarah smiled at that. She'll get answers soon enough. Is our extraction still in place? Coordinates unchanged. Hale's team will meet you there in 4 hours. After ending the call, Sarah turned to Pierce. It's done. Reynolds is finished. Pierce studied her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. So what happens now? To Sarah Blackwood, I mean. It was a question Sarah had avoided considering fully until this moment. For 15 years, she had been Sarah Morgan Quiet Coffee. Shop owner, community member, a woman with a simple, predictable life. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blackwood had been buried so deeply that resurrecting her had required extraordinary circumstances. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm not sure. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood exists anymore, not really. She belonged to a different time, a different world." "But Sarah Morgan was never real," Pierce pointed out. "She was a cover, a necessity." Sarah considered this as they continued moving toward the extraction point, the forest growing less dense as they descended toward lower elevations. "I think maybe they're both real," she said finally. "The commander who led elite teams through impossible situations, and the woman who built a community around something as simple as good coffee, both are part of who I am now." As the afternoon light filtered through the pine canopy, Sarah found herself contemplating not just survival, but the future, something she hadn't allowed herself to do in 15 years. With Reynolds facing justice and the truth about Silver Crescent finally emerging, possibilities stretched before her that had previously seemed unimaginable. "Whatever you decide," Pierce said, "the Navy would be lucky to have you back. Your tactical thinking, your leadership, they're too valuable to lose a second time." Sarah shook her head. "I'm not sure that's my path anymore. 15 years serving a community, building something positive, watching everyday courage in ordinary people, it changes your perspective on what matters. So coffee shop owner by day, secret operative by night?" Pierce suggested with a hint of humor. "Maybe something in between," Sarah replied thoughtfully. "There are other ways to serve, other kinds of teams to lead." They reached the extraction coordinates with an hour to spare, securing the perimeter out of habit rather than necessity. As they waited for Hale's team to arrive, Sarah found herself thinking of Mia, of the niece who had never known her uncles. True heroism of the commander who had carried his body home. "There's someone I need to talk to when this is over," she told Pierce. "Someone who deserves to know the truth about her family's sacrifice." Pierce nodded understanding. "The Chun girl from your café? Michael Chun's niece. She grew up never knowing why her uncle didn't come home, only that he died a hero in an operation that failed. She deserves to know it didn't fail, that we completed the mission, even if it took 15 years. In the distance, the sound of approaching vehicle signaled that their extraction had arrived. Sarah stood, brushing forest debris from her clothes, as she prepared to face whatever came next. "For what it's worth," Pierce said as they moved toward the rendezvous point, "I think Westfield would be proud of how you handled all this. Not just surviving, but finding a way to live with purpose even when everything was taken from you." Sarah considered this. "There's something Lieutenant Torres wrote in his last letter, the one he never got to send. He said, 'Whatever happens out there, I want you to know we trust you completely.' For 15 years, I thought I'd failed that trust. Now I can finally face his family knowing I kept faith with him, with all of them." The extraction team arrived professional, efficient, clearly under Hale's direct command. As they were escorted to waiting vehicles, Sarah took one last look at the wilderness that had briefly been their battlefield. For 15 years, she had lived in shadows, defined by what had been taken from her. Now stepping into the light of vindication, she found herself defined not by loss, but by what she had built from its ashes. 3 days later, Sarah stood before the Senate Intelligence Committee, her testimony the final piece in a comprehensive case against Admiral Victor Reynolds. The evidence Diaz and Rivera had assembled, combined with Sarah's first-hand account of Silver Crescent, left no room for doubt about Reynolds' crimes. "Lieutenant Commander Blackwood," the committee chairman addressed her, "in light of the evidence presented and the extraordinary circumstances of your case, the Department of Defense has authorized me to inform you that your rank and honors have been fully restored, with 15 years of back pay and benefits. Additionally, you are being offered reinstatement at your previous rank with immediate promotion to captain. What is your response?" Sarah, dressed in her service uniform for the first time in 15 years, took a moment before answering. The packed hearing room waited in expectant silence, journalists poised to record her decision. "With respect, Senator, I must decline reinstatement," she said finally. "My service to this country isn't ending, but it will take a different form. The experience of building something positive in a small community, of creating a space where people connect over something as simple as coffee, has taught me that leadership exists in many forms." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I'm establishing the Silver Crescent Foundation, dedicated to supporting veterans transitioning to civilian life and advocating for transparency in military operations. The foundation will also provide resources for military families seeking answers about classified operations where their loved ones were lost." The chairman nodded, understanding in his eyes. "A commendable choice, Captain. Your foundation will have the full support of this committee." As Sarah left the hearing room, she found Mia waiting in the hallway, her purple hair standing out among the conservative suits and uniforms. Their eyes met, a moment of recognition passing between them, no longer boss and employee, but two women connected by sacrifice and truth. "My uncle served under you," Mia said simply. "All these years, you knew who I was, and you never said anything." "I promised myself I'd look after the families left behind," Sarah replied. "Hiring you was the closest I could come to keeping that promise while living as Sarah Morgan." Mia studied her with new understanding. "The letter you left in the caf storage room, it was his, wasn't it?" "The one he wrote before the mission," Sarah nodded. "He wrote it hours before we deployed. He wanted his family to know he served with people he trusted completely. That letter kept me going through 15 years of exile." "And now?" Mia asked. "What happens to Lighthouse Coffee? To everything you built?" "That depends," Sarah smiled. "How do you feel about becoming a partner instead of an assistant manager? The café needs someone who understands its heart, someone who can keep it going while I divide my time between Newport Harbor and Washington." Mia's expression brightened. "You're keeping the café?" "Some battles are fought with weapons," Sarah said, placing a hand on the younger woman's shoulder. "Others are fought with kindness, with creating spaces where people feel welcome, with small acts of service repeated daily. I've learned there's valor in both." As they walked together toward the sunlight streaming through the Capitol's grand entrance, Sarah felt the weight of two identities settling into something new, neither fully the commander she had been nor the coffee shop owner she had become, but something forged from both experiences. The truth about Silver Crescent had finally emerged from shadow into light. The men who had followed her into danger 15 years ago were vindicated at last, their sacrifice given meaning beyond the lies that had buried it. And Sarah Blackwood had reclaimed not just her name but her purpose, transformed by 15 years of ordinary courage into something neither the Navy nor Admiral Reynolds could have anticipated. A warrior who had learned that some battles are won not through force, but through persistence. A leader who had discovered that true strength often lies in the quiet dignity of beginning again. A woman who had lost everything only to build something more enduring from its ashes. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.